Okay, this is the report of the Gualala Area Community Plan, Gualala Community Area Plan Committee on the streetscape requirements for the Gualala MAC in May 2021. These requirements are set by the 2002 Gualala Town Plan, which is enshrined in county ordinances and part of the California Coastal Plan. Just to remind everybody, I'm going to go through a bit of history. The town plan says the main goal of the streetscape project is to make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala townscape to decrease traffic congestion, reduce potential safety hazards, and encourage more pedestrian activity. This began in 1995 when the Gualala Action Committee laid the foundation for the town plan. It was finalized in 2002 when the Coastal Commission made the town plan our local coastal plan after the county adopted it in ordinances. In 2012, the Mendocino Council of Governments agreed to the Interim Constrained Parking Plan, which was an agreement with the surf center owners to allow interim parking at the surf center until they finished the redevelopment project there, but then moved that parking back into that parking lot. Around that time, the highway width was also modified to 60 feet due to existing constraints in the project. In 2019, Caltrans began the preliminary negative declaration review on this project with alternatives 1 and 2. Substantial debate ensued, and long story short, in 2021, Caltrans conducted a survey in January, found very strong support for alternatives 4A and 4B, which comply with the town plan. GMAC approved both these options, as did several community groups, including the Save Gualala group, which had now has 1,650 signatures on their petition. GMAC asked MCOG more recently to move forward with the project as soon as possible, now that there seems to be broad agreement on this, without further recirculation for modifications. Caltrans began assessment of 3 additional ideas for a possible alternative 4C. MCOG has asked Caltrans staff to bring the completed plan back for action as soon as possible, and GMAC provides community input on ideas for 4C, and we're asking Caltrans to move forward on this. The California Environmental Quality Act allows approval of an option like 4C without recirculation under certain conditions. This is important to understand. Recirculation is not required under the following circumstances: if the measures or conditions of the project's approval are added after the circulation of the negative declaration, which are not required by CEQA, as in this case, which do not create new significant environmental effects, still true, and are not necessary to mitigate an avoidable significant effect. And also if new information is added to the negative declaration, which merely clarifies, amplifies, or makes insignificant modifications to the negative declaration. So really C3 is the issue we're looking at. One of the items we'll talk about tonight would have a significant environmental effect. The other 2 would not. So in my opinion, and we'll walk through these. Just to review, alternative 4, which is very strongly supported by the town, was developed by Caltrans and approved by GMAC and by the survey. It complies with the town plan, and it was endorsed by Gualala MAC in January 2021, also supported by Save Gualala. 4A and 4B are the 2 flavors of that so far, and the only difference between them is from Church to Ocean, where the parking, interim parking, would be either on the right side of the street in option 4A or the left side in 4B. At the Mendocino Council of Governments meeting on April 5th, which Robert and I attended, and you can watch it at tinyurl.com/MCOG APR 5 2021. Caltrans reported very strong support for 4A and B, but said it was assessing 3 options that could result in alts 4C. Those 3 options, which I'll go through in more detail, are possible truck parking on the highway at the community center. Caltrans owns a strip of land on the east side of the highway, right at the front of the community center property. The other two involve a possible left turn lane at the north end of the project at Ocean Drive, where we had a serious injury accident recently. And the third was possible interim parking at the Surf. We assume that's in lieu of the parking in the northeast part of town in 4A. There were public comments at the meeting by John Bauer, George Provencher, Dave Shapak, and others, including myself, who presented GMAC's resolution from our last meeting, urging expedited approval and no further public review of the concept. I also showed pictures of the parking throughout town and the Surf Center redevelopment idea that Mr. Bauer had developed years ago and is now talking about updating. The bottom line is that MCOG decided to vote on this matter soon. The chairman, Dan Jurdy, who's also a county supervisor, said, I think we can bring this back as an action item as soon as you're ready, speaking to MCOG staff and Caltrans. Robert and I have reached out to Caltrans as a committee, but we're told the revisions would not even be considered for another month. That would bring us to early May, which is about now. So we want to follow up with Caltrans. We invited them to the meeting tonight, and unfortunately, I guess they were unable to attend. We did not hear back on our request to submit comments. We're hoping that the council will come together and give us more feedback tonight, along with anybody from the community, and we'll give input on the three ideas from the community back to Caltrans so that they can bring it back to MCOG as soon as possible. I mentioned the first idea was to allow, they're studying the feasibility of truck and large vehicle parking at the community center. I'll use my cursor here if you can follow it, but the Caltrans is also pointed to this area with arrows. You see this strip of land at the front of the community center property on the highway. They're proposing to turn that into a parking lot for large trucks and large vehicles. This would be directly opposite the existing parking lot on the west side of the highway. And it would create a very wide plaza, I would estimate 80 to 100 feet. This is the area in question. Now, I want you to look at this and consider you're coming into Gualala from the south for the first time, the gateway to Mendocino County. Just as you see the signs for the Lions and the Rotaries and all that, you're going to see trucks and large vehicles parked there like this. I apologize for the amateurish nature of these drawings, but it does give you an idea of how a couple of large trucks would look there. Because it's a hillside, I'm assuming there would also be a large retaining wall there. And what you're not seeing in this photo is the bike and pedestrian sidewalk is also supposed to be running in here. That, I guess, would be on the street side of this. We don't know. It could be on the retaining wall side. Either way, that's what you'd have. I'm going to flip back again. This or this.
Wait.
Looking at it from the north end, this is the view from the Sunstrom Mall driveway, looking south. Now you can see that little car there, that Prius, is coming up pretty fast, and you really couldn't see that car you can only see that car for about 2 seconds after they emerge from further south. If you pulled out right now in front of that car, you'd have a collision. If you put big trucks there, in that same picture, this is basically what you'd have. You'd have a giant truck there blocking your vision, and pulling out would be much more hazardous. Again, I apologize for the amateurish quality of these photos, but they make the point. This is one more shot that shows you the existing parking lot on the west, and then the area that would be covered on the right. This or this. And this one reminded me of the quote from Una Workabout, who appeared at our meeting last year. Una represented the county's economic development program called Move 2030. Una said, Gualala's appearance is critical to the future of ecotourism in Mendocino County. We can't let it look like a truck stop. We need a sense of nature and beauty from Gualala to Westport. Personally, I couldn't agree more. And this does not look like anything but a truck plaza to me. Our GCAP committee findings, Robert and I discussed this in some depth. We think the idea of the truck parking would violate the town plan on parking and aesthetics grounds. The town plan requires to help mark the southern entry and gateway into Gualala with a planted median to be provided. If you had a turn lane in the center of the highway, as the town plan requires, and as Caltrans provided in option 4, 4A and 4B, that could begin with a planted median. B, the project, according to the town plan, shall be required to help make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala Town Plan. There is no way that I think anybody in Gualala would agree that a truck plaza would add to the scenic element to the townscape. And C, the town plan says parking areas, buildings, and associated landscaping shall be located outside the corridor preservation setback. We believe this raises serious safety concerns due to limited visibility, as you saw with that car coming on and would be hidden by a truck. The location is also inappropriate because who's going to park there and walk to the closest stores? We have ample parking off highway already in several locations, including the Gualala Country Inn, the Community Center, Sunstrom Mall, and other locales where trucks regularly park, and RVs as well. And any time during the day, if you go downtown, you're likely to see them. Existing highway parking is closer and already used by large vehicles. Combined with the existing Caltrans parking lot on the west side, this would transform our southern gateway into a large parking plaza for trucks and large vehicles. So our recommendation as a committee is to have GMAC advise Caltrans and MCOG to reject this idea. Going on to the second idea, which is parking at the SURF. We have previously suggested this at GMAC twice. In fact, we voted to allow interim parking at the SURF according to the interim constraint plan approved by the county in 2012. We've been told that couldn't happen, and when Alternative 4 was developed, Caltrans said that there was too much congestion downtown to allow parking there. So we dropped it, and we supported Alternative 4A and 4B as a result. Caltrans came back at the MCOG meeting and said that it was community requested if parking can be considered in front of the SURF market. Option 4C may be explored to assess this feasibility, and the design team is assessing that now. So that's one of the questions before the council tonight is, what do we think about that at this point? The town has already approved 4A and 4B. In the survey, 4A and 4B got more votes as far as an option of where the parking should be than anywhere between Center and Church. By about 10 percentage points, by the way, I just checked. This is the reason why we generally do not like the idea of on-highway parking. And you might recognize that truck. I borrowed this truck for the other picture. But this is a real picture. This is the exit of the surf center on the southern end. And it is probably the place most likely to have an accident in Gualala when there is a vehicle like that, or even a smaller vehicle parked there. I often see SUVs. I often see other kinds of trucks, or even just passenger cars, obscure the view of what's coming. So we don't want anything but interim parking there, if anything. And the town plan is explicit about that. At night, the situation's even worse, especially on a rainy night. Now, the final idea was for the left turn lane at Ocean Avenue. Again, Caltrans said community requested the feasibility of a southbound Highway 1 left turn lane onto Ocean. That's only the southbound one, and it's only to Ocean, a left turn to Ocean. However, in order to accommodate that, here's southbound 1. This would be a turn lane for southbound 1 turning on to Ocean. But you'll notice that there's another lane over here, left turn lane, allowing a left turn lane onto Ocean for northbound traffic. The bad part about this is this comes from, this is alternative 2 with a 60-foot width. And you can see it can happen within a 60-foot width that you could have left turn lanes. This would also, this was from alternative 2, which had a continuous left turn lane all through this area. Alternative 3 expanded that to a 76-foot width. And alternative 3 was withdrawn partly because of this kind of extra wide berth, which would take out trees and bushes, eliminate a lot of greenery, allow a lot of pavement and retaining walls throughout the project area. And it had no landscaping. So our Gcap findings on the idea of parking at the surf and the left turn lane at Ocean Drive, we combine these, and I'll present those. A, interim parking could be accommodated under the Gualala Town Plan per the 2012 MCOG agreement, but as that agreement said, it is not preferred. And left turn lanes also may be allowed under the GDP. In fact, the GDP requires left turn lanes. B, GMAC previously approved interim parking at the surf twice and then favored 4A because Caltrans determined the downtown was too congested. That may have skewed the results of the survey, and it certainly affected my personal thinking on this project in voting for 4A. If they had not made that finding, I think we might possibly have seen more support for parking in front of the surf, because that's where people actually park on the highway in Gualala at the present time. That would be resolved long-term by Mr. Bauer's redevelopment project for the surf center. And in the meantime, if safety conditions allowed, we could allow some interim parking there per the 2012 agreement. Now, if the council reapproves this, or at least as an option, we believe these conditions should be attached. Allow it only if Caltrans reverses itself and finds the current traffic level can accommodate interim parking safely. Set the interim at 4 years or until completion of the surf center redevelopment project, whichever comes first, and start that clock with MCOG's approval of the concept. Require a 25-foot view clearance from driveways, both northbound and southbound, with red curbs as soon as possible due to existing hazards. They should really be doing that anyway. That truck wouldn't be there if that were the case now. And quite honestly, I'll tell you, if this were my property, I'd be out there with a can of red paint and a brush, because I don't want to see people get hurt. We'd ask them to position the bike lanes inside the parking lane to enhance safety and minimize restriping in the future. In that case, they'd only have to change that parking lane back into a traffic lane and add the turn lane in the middle, and not realign the bike lane at the same time. And having the bike lanes and pedestrians inside the parking lane now would give a little bit of a buffer area between the parking, between the moving traffic and those features. We'd also like to see them set a time limit of 45 minutes for the use of any interim on-way highway spaces. That's because there's almost always off-highway spaces that people could take, and they take the on-highway spaces out of convenience. If they're going in the store or even running in and doing a quick business deal in one of the businesses there, that could be allowed in an interim basis, but time limited. And include interim spaces for large vehicles at the surf center with proper view clearance. One of the main proponents for large vehicle parkings has been Mr. Bauer and the surf center. They will be redeveloping the surf center and can create off-highway parking for large vehicles over time. We don't want them at the community center, but they could be at the surf center on private property off-highway. But in the meantime, those interim spaces could also be used for a delivery truck or whatever needs to stop there. We'd also ask to eliminate interim parking in 4A and 4B, just to make sure that's part of the plan, in favor of safer turn options from Church to Ocean. And we'd also want an agreement that no additional public review, recirculation of the plan would be needed per that CEQA section I cited earlier, because there is a negligible environmental impact. We're simply moving the parking from one part of town to the other and improving safety as the town plan requires. So our recommendation on these two options is that GMAC advise Caltrans and MCOG to assess 4C with the above conditions. Now, we've prepared two motions for tonight, and I guess the proper way to do this would be to read these motions and then open it up to community and council discussion. Robert, is that correct?
I agree, yes.
Okay. I'll read the first motion for the Gualala MAC for truck and large vehicle parking. It is that Gualala MAC strongly advises Caltrans and MCOG to reject the idea of adding truck and large vehicle parking by the Gualala Community Center for the following reasons. One, this would violate the Gualala Town Plan on aesthetics grounds. The GDP says the project shall be required to help make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala townscape, and to mark the southern entry of the gateway into Gualala, a planted median shall be provided. This parking idea is antithetical to either goal. Two, this is beyond the project scope, which bars parking on the highway. The GDP says parking areas shall be located outside of the corridor preservation setback. Three, this raises a dangerous safety issue by limiting visibility of oncoming traffic at one of Gualala's busiest intersections. Four, this location is inappropriate due to walking distance to the closest stores. Existing off-highway parking is closer and already used by large vehicles. And five, this would add considerably to the timing and cost of a vital safety project that the community already has been waiting 26 years for. Likely, a major revision of the Gualala Town Plan would be required, adding potentially another decade of delay and millions of dollars to the cost. And I'll read the second motion, and then we'll need to get a second before we can have discussions. Motion 2, Gualala MAC advises Caltrans and MCOG that an alternative 4C, if any, of the Gualala downtown project may contain both interim parking at the Surf Center and a left turn lane for safety at Highway 1 Ocean Drive intersection, subject to the following conditions. Caltrans must reverse its former finding and affirm that current congestion levels can tolerate interim parking by the Surf Center. They should set the interim at 4 years from the time of MCOG approval, or ending with completion of the Surf Center project, whichever comes first. They should require a 25-foot red curb view clearance from all driveways, both north and south, to enhance safety during this interim. They should position bike lanes inside parking lanes to enhance safety and minimize restriping needs in the future. They should set parking time limit of 45 minutes for any interim parking on the highway spaces, and allow use of interim spaces by large trucks and vehicles if needed. They should eliminate interim parking proposed in 4A and 4B to add the northbound and southbound turn lane from Church to Ocean Drive, including southbound Highway 1 at Ocean. That's a little convoluted. I can go over that if anybody has any questions. But basically it means that there would be turn options all the way from Church all the way past Ocean to make sure that everybody has a way to make a safe left turn, whether northbound or southbound. They should complete the negative declaration process that Caltrans began in June 2019 without recirculation per the CEQA section we've cited. And Caltrans should return the completed concept to MCOG for action as soon as possible per the direction of the council on April 5th, 2021.